Hello, fellow players of Warhammer 40K and Imperial Knights players. This video will be the first video in a multi-part series that deep dives the new changes that were released for the Imperial Knights Codex. So in this video, we will only be going over the army rules, and in subsequent videos, I will be discussing different detachments, going over potential sample lists, or at least the starts to sample lists, since we don't know all the points changes yet, that will be coming up in a Munitorum Field Manual update after the Codex. And we'll be deep diving each one of the detachments, and I'll go over different strategies that I will use with the list that I've created. So there have been maps that were released as part of the recent chapter approved tournament companion, and I've marked them up for the different mission types, and we'll be going over that in subsequent videos. But this video will be only about the army rules, as there has been a significant change in regards to the army rules from the index to the codex. It is similar, but there are some very different things and new ways that they can work. So first of all, in the index, we had Code Chivalric, and you could choose between either Laylo the Tyrant or Reclaim the Realm. Laylo the Tyrant allowed you to re-roll a hit roll and a wound roll for each Imperial Knight unit every time they're selected to shoot or fight. And in order to get Laylo the Tyrant, in order to get honored, that is, you would have to destroy the enemy warlord. And it used to score at the start of your command phase. So in between destroying the enemy warlord and your command phase, if the enemy warlord ever regenerated, then you would not score it. And you would have to kill that model again, because some of the Primarchs and some of the characters like Fabius Bile, they get up again after you kill them. So you have to kill them twice, and then it scores at your command phase, which kind of delays your reward. And your reward is 3 CP. If you're playing the Noble Lance detachment and not the Grotmus detachment, what happened was that one of your stratagems, Squire's Duty, you got a bonus damage if you were honored. And another cool effect is that your detachment rule gave you a 6 up feel no pain, but if you were honored, it would go to a 5 up feel no pain. These are very strong rules that made getting honored very valuable. Now, the other oath that you could choose was Reclaim the Realm. It gave you a movement bonus. And in order to become honored with that oath, you would have to take the enemy's home objective, which, depending on the matchup, could be a lot easier or a lot more difficult than Laylo the Tyrant. However, most people go with Laylo the Tyrant because when you select an oath, that oath's buff becomes immediately available, meaning you get that hit roll and that wound roll from the beginning to the end of the battle, depending on which oath you choose. And in most cases, that damage buff is more valuable than the movement buff, since knights can move through walls using the super heavy walker rule, and since they have very fast movement. The Knight Lancer, for example, goes 14 inches, and it can walk over models. So it is very nice that knights are quick. Therefore, everyone generally went with Laylo the Tyrant. So now, what changed was that you still get oaths, but the oaths are divided into two parts. And I will read this to you, and then I will explain in detail a little bit further. Code Chivalric. Imperial Knights fight by a stringent set of codes. In addition to defeating the foe, honor must always be upheld. If your army faction is Imperial Knights, at the end of the Read Mission objective step, you must determine your army's oath for the coming battle. An oath consists of two parts, one deed and one quality. There are three options for each part, shown below. To determine your army's deed, you can either select one deed or you can randomly select one deed by rolling a d6 and consulting the relevant table below, which I will show you shortly. The selected deed will describe what needs to be achieved in order to complete that deed. To determine your army's quality, you can either select one quality or you can randomly select one quality by rolling a d6 and consulting the relevant table below. Until the end of the battle, the ability described in the quality selected applies to all models in your army with this ability. So, one thing that a friend of mine clarified was that the way it's written, you get the army's quality immediately and until the end of the battle. You do not have to complete your deed in order to earn that quality. So, what reward does that completing the deed do? Well, it is in the final paragraph. The first time your selected deed is completed, your oath is fulfilled, and until the end of the battle, your army becomes honored and you gain 2 CP or 3 CP if you randomly selected your deed and or quality. CP gained in this way are an exception to the core rules that limit the maximum number of CP you can gain per battle round to 1. This means that on the turn you become honored, you can toss one of your secondaries and get a CP and get the full CP that you get from becoming honored. Now, one difference here is that your deed is completed immediately. And I'll go down and show you when each of the deeds complete. But you don't have to wait until your next command phase to check if the deed is completed. You immediately get the 2 CP. So it can happen on your turn or it can happen on the opponent's turn. And now I will show you the deeds and the qualities. So some of the things might be familiar here. The first deed is called We Vow to Lay Low the Tyrant. At the start of the battle, select one character model in your opponent's army. This deed is completed at the end of a turn if that character is destroyed. You could destroy it on your turn, you could destroy it on the opponent's turn through Overwatch, for example, or Thronegeist if you're playing Quest or Forge Pact. These are the army rules, so they apply to Quest or Forge Pact as well. You can complete this on your turn or on the opponent's turn. Unlike before, you do not have to select the Warlord to be destroyed. All you have to do is select any character model. So that means you could select an Ogryn bodyguard, for example. That's kind of ridiculous, but you could select any character. This could be Canis Rex, you could select. You could select a Psyker. A Primaris Psyker is a character. Generally, any leader. So, one of the strategies you could do is if you know that they're going to want to use that character on the front line, you select that character, and the opponent might get scared and not want to reward you with 2 or 3 CP if you randomly selected it. On the right here, you could see D6, so a 1 or a 2 gives you that deed. So they could keep one of the characters that they wanted on the front lines back. So if you choose something like Canis Rex, they might not be inclined to push out Canis Rex and deal damage when they need to. So it is a good deed to select, and it is nice that it's pretty flexible that you can select any character model in your opponent's army. Since you're required to have a warlord, every single army should have at least one character model. And the deed and quality are selected at the end of the read mission objective step, which means by that time you'll probably know what army and what list they're playing. You might not, but generally people show their models when they get to the table. So you can kind of have an idea of what you're going up against, and that might give you an idea which deed you want to take. Next one, we swear to reclaim the realm. Also very familiar. This deed is completed at the end of your opponent's turn if you control more objective markers than your opponent. Now, the previous Reclaim the Realm, you had to take the enemy's home objective, but this one is a lot easier. Just like how Lalo the Tyrant got a little bit easier, Reclaim the Realm got a little bit easier as well, because you only have to control more objective markers than your opponent. In certain detachments, it is a lot easier than other detachments. There are options to play Night Jail now, and I will show you that in one of my subsequent videos. But this is a definitely doable deed, and you could even score this on the first turn if you're aggressive enough. Last one is we pledge to reap a great tally. And this one's a new one compared to the index. This deed is completed at the end of a turn if the number of destroyed enemy units is greater than the battle round number, even if those units are subsequently returned to the battlefield. For example, 2 destroyed enemy units in the first battle round. I like how they gave the example because it clarifies that it has to be greater, not greater or equal to. So, round 1, you have to destroy 2 enemy units. Round 2, you have to destroy 3 enemy units. Round 3, you have to destroy 4 enemy units. This one, I think, is the most difficult of all the deeds. And I think that it is the easiest to score, probably turn 2 or turn 3, depending on which turn is your turn or the opponent's go turn. And it also depends on which army you're playing into and whether they have things like lone op or stealth or a lot of defensive abilities. Like, for example, if you're playing against Guard Siege Regiment, Guard might seem like a very not survivable army, but they have access to stealth on their units. I believe Siege might be the one where they also have bonus to save if they're in benefit of cover. So they have benefit of cover, but if you're already in benefit of cover, then you get a bonus save on top of that. So things like that might make weak looking armies a lot more difficult to destroy. And let's say round 2, you might not be able to fully destroy 3 units. So this one is very difficult and also dependent on the opponent. The first deed to destroy a character, that one is also dependent on the opponent. Yes, you get to select that one character, but if they hide it on the back line the whole game, it might be very difficult to score that deed. Reclaim the Realm, I would say against a generic army, against any army, the Reclaim the Realm is probably the easiest one. And the reason why is in order to get primary points, you want to be controlling more objective markers than your opponent anyway. So it helps the game. It helps you score points. Whereas the first one, yes, you want to destroy things, but you might overcommit too many assets to destroying one character model just to get your CP, so it might backfire on you. Whereas Reclaim the Realm, you want to be scoring primaries and you want to be controlling more objective markers than your opponent anyway. Plus, your Titanic character knights can also action and shoot. That was in the old Pariah Nexus tournament companion, and it is also in the chapter approved tournament companion. So if you put a Titanic knight on an objective, You have a lot of OC on that objective. I believe every single one is 10, if I'm not mistaken. 10 OC, and you can action and shoot. So that is the easiest deed. The last one is, I honestly think it's very difficult to score unless your win condition is tabling your opponent, which is not generally a good win condition. The game is about scoring points. It's about standing on circles, as some of the other YouTubers say, but it's also about scoring secondaries more so than just destroying your opponent. And a lot of times, some armies, like I mentioned before, they make it very difficult to take models off the board. So, next, we're going to discuss qualities. Like the deed, they also have the D6 with the little dice pictures on the right in case you want to roll for it. If it's an army you know you're going to beat, it's an easy matchup. I think Tyranids are a really easy matchup. I have also not lost against Blood Angels. I don't know if I've played a good Blood Angels list, but I've never lost against Blood Angels. So if it's one of those armies, I would probably roll and try to get 3P just to end the game sooner. And if I were going to roll, I would probably roll for the deed. If I got the last one, we pledged to reap a great tally. Oh well, so be it. It's not terribly hard to destroy Blood Angels units, nor Tyranids. A lot of the Tyranid units, like Termagants and Hormagaunts, they're very soft. Gargoyles are very soft. Barbgaunts are soft. Even the stronger ones, like the Tyrannofex, they're not terribly difficult for a knight to destroy. Things like Maliceptors, Exocrines, you can one-shot them with one knight. So against certain matchups that you're very comfortable with, you can roll for a deed. Generally, I would just select a deed, the second one, and I would select a quality, and that would be our first one. The deed and the quality are not linked together. You can select any deed, you can select any quality, you can roll both of them randomly. I don't know why you would roll both of them randomly, because you only have to roll one. Up there, I specified that it says and or quality. So if you're going to roll for that extra CP, I would only roll for one of them and not both. Honestly, I would roll for the deed, but you can roll for the quality too if you have a certain list where all the qualities can help some of your units. Personally, I think one of the qualities are pretty bad, so we'll go through them. The first one is the same one as before. Each time this model is selected to shoot or fight, you can reroll one hit roll and you can reroll one wound roll. That's the best quality. I love it. It makes things like conversion weapons way better because conversion weapons or anything with sustained hits, having a reroll is amazing. In Quester Forge Pact, let me give you an example of a very cool combo with this quality. You take the Knight Castellan, you take a bunch of Skitarii Rangers, and you put the enhancement Knight of the Opus Machina. It's 20 points, and when you're near an Adeptus Mechanicus unit, whether it's a Tech Priest that is in Lone Op through Magos Questoris, or it's a Skitarii Rangers or Vanguard unit, or even a Skitarii Marshal that came out of reserve just so that you can get that buff, you can reroll all hit rolls of one. Now, hit rolls of one are always failing. So getting rerolls of hit rolls of one is amazing. And the Knight Castellan is generally pretty swingy, and he has been recently changed, but not much. He plays exactly the same way. He just received a slight little buff, I believe. And so he hits on threes. You reroll all your ones. And you have Lalo the Tyrant, which lets you reroll one of the hit rolls. So let's say you roll 3 for your D3 Volcano lance shots. If you, let's say, roll a 1 and a 2 and a 3 on your Volcano lance, normally out of 3 shots, only one will hit, but you can reroll the 1 with your enhancement, and with the Lalo army rule, you can reroll that too as well. And so you get to reroll both of your fails, which is very nice. Is that going to come up in game? Absolutely. Because this is for all weapons, meaning whether it's your volcano, your plasma, your shield breaker, your twin meltaguns, you can reroll all the ones with the enhancement, and you can roll an additional one. Not for all your weapons. You have to choose a hit roll. So you could roll one of the volcano land shots, or let's say you land all the hits. Then you have an extra one you can use for one of your missiles, for example. And you can reroll one wound roll. Now your melta guns are twin linked, so you can only reroll each dice once. So you'd have to use it on a different weapon, not your twin melta gun. So you'd generally use it on your volcano lance, but being strength 18, you're probably gonna wound most of your shots anyway. But if you do fail one, you could reroll one of the wound rolls. But if you don't fail to wound with that weapon, you can use it to reroll one of the wounds for your plasma cannon, for example. So in certain detachments with certain rules, Lalo the Tyrant is amazing. It makes a knight that's swingy into a knight that's extremely reliable. Next, we are eager for the challenge. Add 2 inches to this model's move characteristic and add 1 to advance and charge rolls made for this model. This quality is a very good quality. Why? Because movement wins games. I know a lot of the competitive YouTubers, some of the other people, they say movement wins games. This is an amazing quality. However, in certain detachments, it is pretty bad. One of the detachments being one of my favorite detachments that has been released, it is Valor Strike Lance. In your detachment roll, you can reroll advance rolls and you get assault on your weapons. One of your 2 CP stratagems, you get +2 to move and you get +2 to advance rolls. Plus, on top of that, there's an enhancement that you put on a knight that you can apply to another knight. That sounds really interesting, but that detachment, that's how all the enhancements are. You put it on one knight, and that knight hits another knight that's within 12 inches and gives them a buff. One of them's healing, one of them's stealth, and one of them is re-rolling charge rolls. So in that detachment, I would say the Reclaim the Realm, well, the quality associated with Reclaim the Realm is pretty bad. And now I say associated because it's part of the same sentence. We swear to reclaim the realm and we are eager for the challenge. But like I said earlier, the deed does not determine the quality. You can select a deed and you can roll a quality randomly. They're completely not linked together. And the last one is, yet shall our legacy be unsullied. Improve this model's objective control characteristic by 2 and its leadership characteristic by 1. I think that it sounds good, but it's actually really terrible because you are losing so much damage when you could have taken Lalo the Tyrant. You're losing so much movement to get on that objective anyway to put your objective control on it. And consider this. At any given time, how many of your knights are going to be standing on objectives? How often are you going to get battle shocked? Getting battle shocked is bad, but they did change Canis Rex. And Canis, once a battle, he can unbattle shock, kind of like a guard commissar. He can unbattle shock any Imperium unit. That means that he can unbattle shock your knights or your allies, or if you're using Canis as a free blade in a different army, let's say you're running Canis as part of a sister's army, Canis can unbattle shock a battle sister squad, for example. So that bonus leadership, if you're bringing Canis, it doesn't matter at all. You also have a once a battle auto pass, insane bravery stratagem for 1 CP. So, that bonus leadership, it doesn't matter too much unless you're facing Chaos Knights, Traitoris Lance, where they're playing Abominants and they're handing out battle shocks. And every time you're battle shock, you're taking mortal wounds. So in that knife edge case, you may want to take this, but you don't have to select this as part of your army. This is after you read the mission objective. So if you're playing into Chaos Knights and you have a big, big problem with battle shocks, like you see that they have multiple Knight Abominants, maybe they have a Executioner, and you're just afraid that you're going to get battle shocked very often, then maybe you want to take this. But in most cases, for a new player, if you have to just stick with a battle plan, I would go with the second deed, Reclaim the Realm, and the first quality with our Martial Valor Risen Over All. That should probably win you most games. Not win you, but it'll give you the best results in most games, in most scenarios, against most opponents. But if you know what you're getting into, or you've tailored your list a certain way where the second quality, the movement is better. Let's say you're running a straight melee list. You have Canis Rex, 2 Lancers, or maybe you're running 2 Gallants, and that movement characteristic is very important, then you might want to take the second quality. But if you're having a take all comers mixed list and you have a few range units and a few melee units, generally the first quality is the best. Last quality you will almost never use. The only 2 armies I would play it against are Chaos Demons and Chaos Knights. And still, I would probably choose Lalo the Tyrant for both of them. As part of the army rules, we have an ability called Bondsman. Those honored to serve a great hero do so unto death. Some Imperial Knights models have a Bondsman ability tagged with the word Bondsman. In your command phase, 1 or more models from your army with a Bondsman ability can use that ability. For each one that does, select 1 friendly Armiger model within 12 inches of that model. You cannot select an Armiger model that is already being affected by a Bondsman ability. Until the start of your next command phase, that Armiger model is affected by that Bondsman ability. So most of you who have played Imperial Knights are familiar with this. It's been around, I think, for multiple editions. But for those of you who are new, the some Imperial Knights models are the Questores. So they're the shortest knights that are not armigers. They're the shortest Titanic knights. And the Cerastus, those are the tall, skinny, lanky boys. Those 2 chassis, they have bondsman abilities, and essentially it's a buff that you give to your armiger. Some of the buffs, most of the buffs, I'm gonna say, are very ranged attack oriented. Some of them are melee attack oriented, and I believe maybe only one of them is defense oriented. So that one is -1 to incoming damage, and that is very nice. It used to be on the Knight Warden, but now they changed it. That ability is currently on the Knight Defender, according to the Codex release. So that one was a staple in some of the lists, but definitely not an auto include. People used to run it in Noble Lance Detachment with a Knight Warden with the enhancement Mythic Hero, which allows you to use your Bondsman ability on 2 different armigers. The other attack buffs, for example, the Knight Castigator has sustain hits 1 and a bonus -1 AP on an armiger. So that is very nice on Helverins and double Graviton Moiraxes. Why? Because neither the Helverin nor the Graviton have sustained hits, and both of them have AP -1, so they could benefit from AP -2. So the Castigator has one of the best bondsman abilities in the game, I think. Now, the Warden has been changed so that the Warden gives sustained hits and ignores cover, which is, I would say, almost as good. Ignores cover, most people say it's like bonus AP, but it's not, because if you're overwatching them, sometimes they're in front of your face and they're not in cover. And if you have ignores cover, it does nothing. So I still think the Castigator ability is a little bit better, but there are some other ones that give you bonus to hit. There are some of them. I think the Knight, not Rampager, the Imperial Knight version's a Gallant. The Gallant gives you rerolls to hit in melee. Lancer gives you advance and charge on an armiger. So in certain detachments, I'm gonna say 2 detachments: Valor Strike Lance, where you get it straight from the detachment rule, you get assault, and Quester Forge Pack, where it's a stratagem where you can advance and shoot. It will pair well with the Lancer's Bondsman ability, because in the past, the Armiger Warglaves had a 24-inch range on their main Meltagun, their thermal spear, I believe. But recently, a couple months ago, they dropped that range to 18 inches on the Warglaive. So being able to advance, shoot, and charge, because the Armiger Warglave's ability is when it makes a charge, it gets +1 to its strike profile, which is the big high strength attacks, or +2 attacks to the sweep profile, which is a lot of the small attacks, the low strength attacks with the low damage. So the Warglaive works amazing with assault and with advance and charge. So some bondsman abilities are better in certain detachment than others. Next, Super Heavy Walker. For those of you who have played Imperial Knights, you guys are probably already familiar with it. The page is a little screwed up, but I'll see if I can read it as best as I can. Imperial Knights tower over the battlefield, striding over lesser warriors to eagerly engage the foe. Each time a model with this ability makes a normal, advance, or fallback move, it can move through models, excluding Titanic models, and sections of terrain features that are 4 inches or less in height. When doing so, it can move within engagement range of enemy models, but cannot end that move within engagement range of them. It can also move through sections of terrain features that are more than 4 inches in height. But if it does after it has moved, roll 1d6. On a 1, that model is battle shocked. The orcs have something similar, but you don't have to roll a d6 on their dreads. So is it a good ability? I mean, it's free. In guard, there's Crash Through, which is a 1 CP stratagem, which lets you take a tank through a ruined wall. And I think it's an amazing stratagem, but you have to pay a CP for it. Generally, you're bringing Lord Solar anyway, so you get a free CP, but still, you have to pay CP for it. And if you forget to save up for it and you really wanted to go through that wall, well, too bad, so sad you can't. A knight, you can just walk through the wall without having to spend CP, that valuable CP. So this is a pretty good ability. It's not the best one, but it's a really good ability. Next one is the Free Blades. This one applies more to allied units. Well, knight allies in other Imperium armies. Let's read it. Free Blades often wander the galaxy, aiding the armies of the Imperium against the Xenos and heretics who threaten the Emperor's realm. If every model in your army has the Imperium keyword, you can include either 1 Titanic Imperial Knights model or up to 3 Armiger models in your army, even if they do not have the faction keyword you selected in the Select Army faction step. None of these models can be a warlord, and they cannot be given enhancements. Is this a good ability? It lets you ally knights. I think it's a great ability for adding flavor to your army. Generally, other than Canis Rex, I don't think it's advisable. I have played against people who used knight allies, and I have played with knight allies. In my opinion, I think that knight allies are terrible, but other people have beaten me using knight allies. So, and this was when I was playing guard, by the way, not when I was playing knights. But I think that the Lalo the Tyrant rerolls are so good. The enhancements, some of them are pretty good. So I think that you're taking a big loss by taking any of the knights as a free blade, except for Canis Rex, because he's a epic character and he cannot be given enhancements anyway. And the issue is with the free blades is that most armies and most detachments don't support knights. Usually they are faction locked. There's an exception. In the Guard Siege Regiment, you can give 3 units stealth. So, since it doesn't specify that they have to be Astra Militarum Regiment or a platoon or whatever, you can give it to a knight. But other than that, there's not much stratagem or support for allies in general from other armies. So I think it's either Canis Rex or it's in the Guard Siege detachment if you want to be fun with it. But generally, I would not advise Free Blades because there are better units that can benefit from your detachment and army rules that knights can't. So this concludes the army rules section for Imperial Knights. And I thank you guys for watching. If you guys want to learn more specifics about the new stratagems and the new enhancements that came out with each of the detachments, then please feel free to continue watching the other videos in the series, and I'll discuss more of the new content there. All right. Good luck in your next games, and praise the Omnissiah.
Is to break with facing praise to the God of all machines, to the God of all machines. His sacred designs are supreme.